they're running out. They're running out of batteries.
Welcome in, everybody. Everybody's there. Let's do it. That's great. Let's watch Tank video.
So last year I did a video on tour bus costs, how much a tour bus costs in 2022 and why a lot of tours are canceling over, cost of touring and stuff like that. And something came up recently where I wanted to do a new updated video on this. And we're live on Twitch right now. Hello, chat. And the reason I want to do this live on Twitch is because lately I've really been enjoying just being on Twitch with everybody because people ask questions. It's raw. It's in the moment. Some people bring up things that makes me talk about more stuff. Like, these are always fun. So today we're going to do this on Twitch. But recently, I don't know if anybody else saw this. Avenged Sevenfold vocalist M Shadows was on a podcast, the Jackson podcast. They were talking about a lot of different things. And at one point, Jackson had brought up touring costs. And M Shadows started talking about how expensive things are. And he specifically mentioned bus costs. And what he said kind of blew me away. But I want to show it to you guys really quick before we really dive into what we're doing today. Because I have 4 different bus quotes that I want to go over with you guys to show you the difference in prices of how things are going nowadays. So let's check this out.
So in terms of touring, you know, you guys have obviously sold out stadiums all over the world. How has touring changed for music artists, not just Avenged Sevenfold, but this idea of music touring, like in terms of money and what artists have to do for it and, you know, actually selling seats?
Yeah, it's completely different than the last time we even toured. I mean, we toured 7 years ago and it was one way. Now we've noticed that the crew costs more, the production costs more, the buses cost more, ticket prices are going up. People aren't happy about it. Everything costs more. And you're dealing with a completely inflated situation where there's bands like Godsmack who just canceled South America based on not enough tickets sold because the prices are so high to get there. And then you get there and you're like, okay, well, I'm going to go there for a month and make no money or lose money. And so you're starting to see a lot of bands cancel Europe, cancel South America. The States are already hard enough. I know that even our busing on this tour, I think it was something like $2 million more this time to get the busing for the normal tour. That's like $2 million added on.
$2 million
Where do you
is
make that
fucking
money back?
ridiculous, dude.
All right, we're going to stop that right there because that's the important thing we want to focus on. And I'll actually link this podcast in the description of this video if anybody wants to go see it. $2 million more is what M Shadows just said. Not $2 million. $2 million more than the last time they toured. Now, I'm not going to lie. Immediately when I heard that, like the TM brain in me was like, that number seems really high. That really high and inflated. However, to be fair and to be realistic, I don't know their travel situation. I don't know how many buses they're bringing out. I don't know how long they've leased them for. That's a big thing you need to know because sometimes bands will lease buses for the duration of the tour. Sometimes they'll lease them for half a year, a full year. So I don't know what their situation is, but $2 million is bonkers. But if they're bringing out like 10 to 12 buses, dude, it's very, very reasonable to believe that it is $2 million more. So for the rest of this video, what I want to do today, take some quotes that I have from bus companies, from prepping tours. A lot of you guys know already that I am going to be tour managing this summer on the Electric Callboy Tour, but a lot of people don't know that I've also taken on a side role as like a tour production consultant for quite a few other tours where I don't go on that tour, but I help them prep for things. So stuff like renting gear or renting buses and getting information like that. So a lot of these quotes are from those other tours. I'm not going to tell you what these tours were for or anything like that. We're just going to go over numbers and then we'll discuss. Now, before we start, because I know there's a lot of impatient fucking people on the internet, and that's fine. I know people don't have the patience to watch a whole video. Right now, I'm just going to give you all these prices. I'm going to give you all these prices right now for those of you that don't feel like watching an entire video so you can be like, oh, okay, cool. But what I will say, every situation is different.
Joe Coy, Just Being Coy Tour.
It feels good to laugh. That's why I tell people laugh. It's free.
Now, that's a very important number because a lot of people like to look at the overall big numbers and be like, wow, that's a lot. But when you're renting buses, you really got to look at the day rate for the bus. That is the standard that a lot of tour managers and production managers and management look at. They don't look at the overall cost. They look at what is that day rate. $650 per day for a bus is a very good rate right now. Very good. You know, usually you're seeing between like 8 and 1,000 or more than that sometimes. Question already, and this is a great question because we do need to go over this. Is that with gas, driver, food stuff, inside and out such? No, that doesn't cover any of that. The $650 per day, the bus rental day rate, is how much it costs to have that bus on the road. The rest of these quotes have breakdowns for everything else. So you're going to see how it all adds up. So the estimated mileage for this specific quote was 10,440 miles, and they charge 30 cents per mile on that. So the bus rental alone, $650 for 29 days, $18,850. So that's your base cost for just renting it with nothing else, $18,000. And then that mileage charge that they have at the 30 cents at just over 10,000 miles is $3,132 extra dollars. And then you got a couple other fees in here that some bus companies do, some don't, but it's a very common thing. End of tour cleaning, $450. So at the end of tour, when it gets back, they're going to pay a cleaning crew to clean the inside, sterilize the bus and stuff like that. That's $450. A comforter cleaning is $150 per how many times the driver cleans sheets on that tour. Because if there's 12 bunks on a tour, you got to think you don't want dirty ass roadie sheets for days, like weeks at a time. So part of the bus driver's job actually is usually once a week they'll clean the sheets. Like when you're inside working during the day, the bus driver will strip all the sheets. They'll either wash them in the venue or maybe take them to their hotel or a laundromat or something like that. And they'll do that. This bus also is going to have a trailer on it for gear or merch or whatever else. And there's an extra fee for a driver pulling a trailer because it's going to put more strain on the bus. The fee is $100. At our 29 days, that's another $2,900 added on. Satellite service and Wi-Fi service. That's two things that are on all buses, but they got to pay for that stuff. And you got to think with how many satellite receivers, if a bus company has like 40 buses, their, DirecTV bill is going to be massive. So they charge for that. So, satellite service is $15 a day, which comes out to $435. Wi-Fi internet service, same thing, $15 a day, $435. Department of Transportation fee, they charge $10 a day. That'll be $290. Debro just asked, would these companies also rent trailers? It depends. Some of these bus companies own their own trailers, and some of them actually do have to rent third party. And then just a couple other things on here. Bus wash, $85, 4 times over the course of the tour. That might be more or less depending on what the bus driver feels like, but you have to pay for the bus being washed, $85. Generator service, $80, 4 times over the tour. That's $320. The generator service is, the oil needs to be changed in it and stuff, because when a bus is parked and it's not running, there still needs to be electricity and everything on it. So the air conditioning works and the TV and the lights and everything work. So if the bus isn't plugged into shore power to venue, the generator will run, and that needs gas, oil, all that. So the bus drivers do services on those generators while we're on tour. Last little thing on here is the admin fee, which is basically just the fee for their office, like probably to cover the salary of the people that work and doing all this paperwork and stuff like that. Admin fee is $1,885. That's for the person making sure all this is set up and stuff like that. But then you get to the driver pay.
Why no fucking buddy wants to go on fucking tour,
the actual
dude.
bus rental does not include the driver pay. Driver pay for this specific company is $425 per day. So that driver will make $425 per day
Shit's fucking ridiculous.
at 29 days is $12,325. Not bad for 29 days of work, right? Now, in my last video, a lot of people were bringing up the fact that the driver probably doesn't get all of that. They said that, companies will up their prices and the driver doesn't get it. I spoke to many entertainment bus drivers that I know in this industry, and they told me that those numbers are accurate. That is their day rate for driving a bus. They're not upcharging it. If they wanted to upcharge, they would just add it onto the bus rental fee. $425 is the driver's pay. Now, whether that gets taxed or they get 1099 at the end of the year, I don't know. But $425 is their base rate for driving. But then on this tour, there's also overdrives. Now, an overdrive is when a driver drives past a first legal limit of driving. If a driver goes over that, then they get into an extra day's pay. It's like overtime. But then there are legalities that stop them driving after a certain amount of time. They have to rest. But if they get into that overdrive, they get an extra day's pay. And this tour had 13 estimated overdrives on it, which came out to $5,525, which makes the total driver's pay for this tour for 29 days of work $17,850 for a grand total of $47,037 for one bus. That's the day rate, the mileage that's tacked on, the cleaning, the Wi-Fi, the DOT fees, the driver pay. That's everything minus they do not include fuel in these. So if we do some math really quick, the tour was estimated at 10,440 miles. Let's just average this at a bus, from what I've heard from bus drivers, usually gets about 7 miles a gallon. So if we take our 10,440 divided by 7 miles a gallon, and then let's just estimate diesel averaging, I don't know, let's say $4.25 for diesel for the entire tour. Might be lower in some places, might be higher, but let's just average $4.25. You're looking at an additional cost of $6,338 in fuel that the tour has to pay for, that the bus company does not. Also, one of the things in the US is that the bus driver does not have a bunk on the bus like they do in Europe. So you need to buy a hotel room for the bus driver to sleep in every single day. So if you factor that in too, average price of a hotel room, let's just say $200 times 29 days, that's another $5,800. You're looking at about $59,000, all expenses for this. Flinky just asked a good question, actually. Do you take into account the bus being idle? No, that fuel cost was just based off mileage alone. That does not account the bus sitting idle or anything. So fuel is probably...
Sean Combs is a monster.
I want to speak about this now because I've witnessed everything.
I've known Sean since he was 4 years old.
He thought if people fear him, they respect him.
I think Sean Combs can get away with anything.
How?
Probably gonna be a little more than that. So when Ronnie Radke cancels a show, he takes a huge hit to the wall because he still has to pay crew and rentals. Yeah, absolutely. 100%. Like that's that. I gotta take Ronnie's side on that argument, because a lot of people have been like, "Oh, dude's just canceling shows." I'm like, bro, every time he cancels a show, he loses money. He's got to pay for the buses out there, the trucks, the crew, the bands. Like, yeah. So the people that are saying he wants to cancel shows are fucking very wrong. No artist wants to cancel a show, dude. Karen, you bring up a great point. It's the overhead cost. Like the overhead cost of running a bus company is insane. Because think, you got to buy the buses. You got to, like, okay, one of my favorite coach companies in Nashville, Pioneer Coaches, they have a huge, huge shop outside of downtown. And when I say shop, I mean they have a yard where all the buses are stored all the time, like when they're not on tour. They have a giant warehouse where they're customizing buses for artists, because that's another thing. If an artist leases a bus or has one built for them, they can get it customized. They have a fucking warehouse that's just for mechanics. Every time a bus comes back from tour, they're doing tune-ups and doing mechanic work on it. Dude, the overhead cost for running a bus company is insane. And that is probably why labels and stuff don't want to have anything to do with it. There are some labels out there that I know own a couple buses, but you got to think the upfront expense for a bus is so high that a label would still charge their own band for using it probably. An average bus in Europe costs about $50,000 to $60,000 just to buy. I believe that would be a gross fucking understatement. Add another zero to those numbers. Here's a website that sells buses. A 2023 X3, a Prevost with a front slide and rear slide. So this is a like state-of-the-art bus. A 2023 Prevost X3 is $1.9 million. Here, I'll just go to an older one. Let's
That's
go to a
fucking
10-year-old
insane.
bus. A 2014 Prevost XL2 with slide outs, $1.1 million. But let's continue on. Let's
These
continue
are
on.
very, very, very.
So the next
very
quote
nice
that we're going to go
buses,
over
but
now,
still,
this is
that's
the really high one that I
incredibly
listed,
ridiculous.
$121,000. Keep in mind, this is why I said at the beginning, there are other factors into this. That quote is for 2 buses. They just did it in one quote. But remember how we were talking about how the day rates are so important, right? This specific tour was quoted at 30 days. First bus was $850 a day, and the second bus was quoted at $800 per day. And that comes out to a grand total of $25,500 for the first one and $24,000 for the second one. This company charged $90 a day for trailers. Both buses were going to have trailers, so that's an extra $5,400. So these guys also charged for wireless internet and DirecTV $30 at 30 days. That's $3,600 for both. DOT fees were $30 a day. So this is already more expensive than the last one in every aspect, but then you get into the driver pay. This driver pay initially is lower, $400, but then they also tack on an extra $50 for the driver having to pull a trailer. So you're at $450. So this one has everything that the last one had. They have weekly generator services, trailer washes, bus washes, all that stuff, prorates for mileage, all that, you know. Again, they do not have fuel built into this at all. So where the first quote was $47,000, just for everything but like the fuel and the hotels and stuff like that. These 2 buses were $121,368.76. So you're looking at around about $60,000 per bus, and then again add on another 10 grand for like fuel and hotel rooms for the driver. So now we're at about $70,000 per bus from this company. 10,000 more than the first company. Now there are some differences here. The first bus company quote, that bus was a nice bus, but it did not have slides on them, so the front lounge doesn't slide out. One of these buses does, so that's why it was $50 extra a day. So those are the little things that also factor into these. Costs. All right, so the next one, again, this is one bus. Again, this isn't a 2-bus one. This is one bus. This one was quoted at $59,000, $59,194.84. This is another Prevost XL2 that does have a slide, and the day rate on this one was $650 per day. So $650 per day, pretty good. That's the same price as the very first company, and this bus has a slide. This quote was also estimated for 29 days, so you're looking at about $18,000 for just renting. Their trailer rental was $85 per day. TV and internet was $25 a day each. And then you've got, again, the same thing as all the other companies, DOT fees, engine services, comforter cleaning, end of tour cleaning, admin fees, all that stuff. Driver pay for this company was $450 per day. They actually estimated fuel into this one. So if we look at just the bus cost alone, this one was also estimated at about 11,000 miles, a little over. So the bus quote on this one is actually $46,000. So just a hair under the first one, $46,000, but they included a fuel estimate in here. So their quote is $59,000. And that seems a little high. It seems a bit high, but a lot of these companies like to shoot higher, because what's going to happen in a situation like that is that their driver will pay for all the fuel on the tour with that company's credit card so that the tour doesn't have to worry about it. But then at the end of the tour, the company is going to invoice the tour back for all the fuel that was spent. So it could be under the estimate, it could be over, but the tour is liable for all of that. So the first quote and this quote are pretty similar, and they're again, in my opinion, as a TM, pretty decent. Like, I would suggest both of these for a tour because they're good. Now, the last one that I got that I want to go over is actually fucking mind-blowing. So remember we were talking about day rates, how important a day rate is. Your day rate for a bus gives you a good idea on what you're going to spend, right? First one was $650. Second one was $850 and $8 per bus. Third one was $650. Day rate for this fourth quote, $1,400. And it's the same kind of buses as all the other quotes with a slide. $1,400 per day for this bus quote. They estimated this specific tour at 23 days, $32,000 just to rent the bus for the duration of 23 days. This is one bus. Everything that they have on here is the exact same as the other quotes. They have the driver payroll, $450 a day, on par with the other ones. Trailer rental, $90 a day, on par. Their direct TV and internet is $40 a day. They have their, generator services. They have their engine services, their maintenance, end of tour cleaning, all that stuff. There is a slight fuel estimate in here. There's a line on here that says dead fuel. That refers to the deadheading. That's the start and end of a tour. So this bus is going to leave its shop, deadhead to the first tour, and then after the tour ends, it's going to deadhead back to the shop. Deadhead means just continuous one shot. They're not stopping anywhere. It's a solid drive. They actually did estimate fuel for that, and it was $6,700. So even if you take, let's say $7,000 just for rounding numbers, even if you take $7,000 out of that, you're still looking at $73,000, not including the fuel for the tour. So let's add like another $6,000-7,000, and then the hotels for the driver. So you're still over $80,000. So we've got everything from so far on these four quotes, we've got everything from about $47,000 a day up to, $47,000 per tour per bus up to 80. It's fucking wild. That's a big range, dude. And one of the unfortunate things about this, in my opinion, is I think this specific company probably knows that everybody's looking for buses right now because every fucking band in North America is on tour. We've been talking about bus shortages. It's very hard to find a bus right now. I think this company knows that, and I think they're charging a little more than they normally would because they think that somebody has to pay it. That's a situation that a lot of bands are facing right now too. That is why the cost of bandwagons are going up. If anybody's not familiar with bandwagons are like basically miniature buses. Like you've seen them at a lot of shows. They're the big black, they look like trucks, but they're, they convert the insides with bunks and a living room area and stuff like that. I mean, I'll look right now. So let's look at bandwagons really quick. This will be a little bonus content for this. Let's look at bandwagon, because I know a lot of people have said if you can't afford a bus, do a bandwagon instead, which a lot of mid-level touring bands do bandwagon. It is a good option. But with bandwagons, they don't provide drivers. You're literally renting the vehicle. So either you guys have to drive or you have to find a driver, which I would never recommend any band drive themselves. Now, I did it. When we were in our band and we were unsigned and it was just the five of us, yeah, we fucking drove everywhere because we had to. But if you're in a professionally touring band, you need to be resting. I mean, that's so dangerous. If you've been working all day long and then you put on a show and then you load out and then you guys all have to fucking take turns driving or something, man, it sucks. It can be done, but it sucks. Here are the two kind of bandwagons we have. We have a standard 10 bunk unit, a standard 9 bunk unit. Let's just go to the 10. It says as low as $589 a day. Let's just make shit up here, right? Pickup date, let's just fucking say, let's August 1st to September 1st. 1 month. We'll just do 1 month. Let's say vehicle delivery, vehicle recovery. That means the bandwagon is based in Indiana. Let's say your band is from California and you're starting a tour there and you don't want to fly somebody out to get it from Indiana. You can... They will deliver it to you and they will also pick it up at the end. Let's rent a trailer as well. So based on this, 1 month of a bandwagon, you're looking at $629 a day. Now, again, that doesn't include a driver. That does not include gas. You have to pay gas. And it runs on diesel. And according to their thing, it says it gets 8 miles a gallon. So let's just say, again, for the sake of numbers, we're doing a $10,000 tour or 10,000 mile tour divided by 8 miles a gallon. and multiply that again by $425 average cost of diesel, you're looking at about $5,300 in expenses. So you're looking at about $29,000 rounded up to rent one of these for an entire tour. That $29,000 includes fuel. I threw the fuel estimate in myself. Seems a lot cheaper than a bus. Seems great. Got to keep in mind, if you're like a professionally touring band with a crew or something, you should probably hire somebody to drive. I mean, even if you want to pay them, like, let's say $300 a day to drive, about another $9,000. At that point, you're at about $38,000. And there's probably going to be more expenses that go into this than we're talking about right now. You're really only saving $10,000 from getting a bus. Well, after fuel, I think it'd be a little more than that, maybe about 15. That's a good chunk of savings for a lot of bands. But from some of the conversations I've had with other people that use Bandwagon a lot, it's a lot more expensive than it was a few years ago. But we're just talking about the pure pricing of everything right now. And it's like a Bandwagon costs 75% of what a bus costs.
And all that shit's ridiculous. It's like people wonder why bands aren't going on a fucking tour. They do, it's expensive as fuck to the tickets.
So you can see how the cost of transportation for a lot of these tours is really jacking up a lot of people's plans and stuff. And then we haven't even talked about semis, right? For the same kind of tour, like a month, 10,000 miles, something like that. You're going to spend about $40,000 on a truck too, usually including fuel. The trucking company will include fuel. If you're on a big tour, let's take our lowest quote we got. The $59,000 including fuel estimate, right? Let's say a band is bringing out 12 buses. $708,000 just to rent the buses that you need to transport your crew and band from show to show. That is not including all of the hotel rooms for the drivers. That is not including overdrives. That's not including a lot of other things. And then you got to think, if you've got a tour with 12 buses, you're probably going to have at least 7-8 trucks. Those trucks are $40,000 a piece. Let's just round it to 10 to make the math easier. 10 semi-trucks, $400,000. You're at $1.1 million just for transportation alone. And again, that's understating it, because you're still going to have the hotel room buyouts and the cost for a lot of other things. Fucking co-drives. We haven't even talked about co-drives. If there's a long drive, let's say it's like an 800-mile drive somewhere. A band needs to make it 800 miles from one place to another in a certain amount of time. One driver cannot legally do that in the time necessary. So a lot of the times the bus company will fly out a co-driver. So what'll happen is the first driver will take their like 10-hour shift or whatever. And then when they legally can't drive anymore, that co-driver will take over. The tour is liable for the pay for that driver and their flights to and from. So, dude, there's so many costs that go into this that are just ridiculous. Debrug said, so how does this match up with that $2 million increase for Avenged Sevenfold? That I can't answer. I don't know what they're traveling with. And like we've already stated, it's going to run over $1.1 million just for 12 buses and 10 trucks. And that's a fucking lowball number. So when you start factoring in the fuel, and you start factoring in the hotel rooms, and you start factoring in the overdrives, the co-drives, every little cost that goes into maintaining all of that stuff out on the road, yeah, you're going to get up there. And keep in mind, that's Cthulhu just hit the nail on the head too. Keep in mind, all of these numbers that we just did were based off a 1-month tour. That's per month. So now with all that information in mind, M Shadows' number does not seem like blown up or anything, because if they're going out on the road for 3 or 4 months, they're easily going to be paying $4 or $5 million. Fucking insanity, dude. So these are the things that I just want fans to keep in mind. Like when you go see those big tours and you're, thinking about the high ticket prices and stuff like that, is like these bands are eating so much money on the road. To tour and to be viable and out there and doing these things, bands are incurring higher expenses right now than they've ever incurred ever in the history of touring. And it's a lose-lose for everybody. Because we've already seen Live Nation is making record fucking profits, but the bands are paying more, the fans are paying more, everybody's upset about it. But the big promotion companies are making a fucking killing right now.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
What else do we got to watch? Let's see what she popped in.
Oh my goodness, the heaviness. The music doesn't stop. We just had Whitechapel win Deathcore, obviously. It's already certified. It's stamped by the, I don't know, the core police. Sure. But we have new Psycho Frame. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of this band. I haven't really talked about them much on my channel. You guys showed me this band through our little series of checking out kind of small.
Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name's Tank, and if it's your first time here and you don't know me, I'm a roadie with about 18 years of experience in the touring music industry. Currently, I'm a tour manager, but over the years, I've done a lot of different things, from being a backline tech to a merchandise manager, a lighting director, a pyrotechnician, and probably a few other things, but that's not really important. Today, I want to do a video about all the different job titles on tour and what they actually do. Because I've realized lately that sometimes there's a lot of confusion with the general public about what these titles mean and what people do on the road. I mean, I've told people I'm a tour manager and they think that means I'm the band's actual manager, which is very different. Now, I don't say any of that to make anybody feel bad. You wouldn't know this. Most of these terms are specifically related to touring, and only people that tour would probably know them. But I felt like this might be a cool thing to do just to, I don't know, get a little information out there. But real quick before we start, let's go over that term roadie really quick, because there's a lot of different opinions on it, and there's a lot of people that think it means different things. But to put it quite simply, a roadie is somebody that tours with a band and does work for a band. That's it. It's pretty basic. There are some people in the industry that think that it's a negative term, like calling somebody a roadie is demeaning for some reason. And I will admit, when I was younger, I thought that too, until I got older, learned from some of the veteran roadies that it's actually more of a term of endearment. And it is also not to be confused with the term groupie, which is something completely different. So if anybody ever tells you they are a roadie for a band, that just means specifically that they work for a band and they tour with them every day. Now, before we dive into all of this, I'm going to break this down into different categories. I'm going to talk about the band and artists. Believe it or not, there are a few definitions in there we should probably cover. I'm going to talk about off-the-road management positions, on-the-road management positions, and then pretty standard crew positions as well. Now, the bigger or smaller a tour is, you might see some of these on a tour, or there might be things I don't cover in this video. There are a ton of different jobs that you can have on the road. The ones that I chose to cover in this are just pretty typical ones that you would see. But let's start off here with some band terminology and start with artist. Now, artist is kind of an encompassing term that refers to anybody that's in the actual band. If they're a band member, they're an artist. But there are times where that changes, specifically if you're dealing with a country musician or a hip hop act or a pop act or something like that. You may hear the main person referred to as the artist and everybody else referred to as band members. You might often hear the term principal artist as well, which basically means that they're kind of the head honcho. They're the important one. I don't think anybody wants to say that, but that's what principal artist means. And as we've already brought up, band members too. That can be an encompassing term that just means anybody in a band, and you often hear that when you're dealing with rock and metal or anything that requires multiple people that are part of the same musical organization. Now, when it goes back to those country, pop, hip hop stuff, even some rock bands, you may hear the term hired gun, which actually means that that band member isn't officially part of the band. They basically just get a salary, like the rest of the crew, to get on stage and perform. Another one that you might hear, aside from your typical like guitarist, bass player, drummer, vocalist, is an auxiliary player. Now, an auxiliary player specifically is somebody that may play multiple instruments during a set. They're often there to play things that might have been recorded in the studio that they don't have a full-time band member for, and usually auxiliary players do become hired guns, that term we just talked about. You might see them playing keyboards. You might see them play a brass instrument or another stringed instrument, steel guitar in country a lot. You see auxiliary players play a lot of different things, and usually these people will know how to play a lot of different instruments. Moving on to the typically off-the-road management positions, the first thing I want to talk about is the band's manager, also known as the artist manager, or most oftenly just manager. If you ever hear a band say our manager, this is the person they're talking about. This is the person that oversees their entire career for the most part. They help guide the band to make business decisions. They introduce them to record labels to try and get them a deal. They introduce them to PR people or booking agents, which we'll talk about shortly. Now, managers don't usually make all of the decisions for a band without talking to the band first. There are some cases where some managers that do have a lot of pull in the industry and they have a lot of trust from their bands, they might make decisions without running it by the band. But for the most part, they're there to just guide the band and help them make the best decisions that will be beneficial to their careers. And sometimes these managers will have a day-to-day manager, which is kind of like an assistant manager. This person will usually handle scheduling for the band or maybe booking travel and stuff like that that's not pertaining to touring. This person is there to take care of all the stuff that the band's manager may not have time for, especially because a lot of these artist managers and band managers manage multiple bands, so they have to have another person with them to help with all of this. The next thing on the list to talk about is booking agents. Oftentimes, some people think that band managers are the ones booking shows for their bands, which, if it's a very small band, that may be the case. But 99% of the time in the touring music industry, a booking agent is the one that is there to book shows, festivals, tours, and all of that for their bands. Now, they might work independently, or they might work for a larger firm that has a lot of contacts and stuff like that. There are a lot of different booking agents that specialize in different kind of tours on the road. And there are a lot of booking agents that have been doing this for a very long time where a lot of the industry knows their names. But these are the people that are the ones getting their bands on tours. They're negotiating the money, the guarantees that their bands are going to get. And oftentimes they're the direct line of communication to tour managers on the road, which we'll talk about later, if there are any problems with the shows or the promoters or anything like that. As a tour manager, when I start advancing and doing production stuff for tours, the booking agent is usually the first person that I get all of my information on, or information from, rather. Show deals, merchandise splits, what ticket sales are before the tour. All of that stuff is going to come from the booking agent and or their staff. And working hand in hand with them are show promoters or talent buyers or simply promoters. These are the ones that are actually booking shows locally. Or if you're talking about bigger companies like Live Nation or AEG, they're booking full tours on continents and in different countries and stuff like that. Now, don't confuse this with a booking agent who works for the band to get them shows. This is the person that's purchasing that show from the booking agent. So this is the person or the company that is paying for this band to perform wherever they book them. And last but not least, for off-the-road stuff is publicity or PR people, which you might hear often. These are the people that are doing all of the media for the bands that they work for, lining up interviews, trying to get them guest spots on whether it's radio or local TV, or in the day and age we're in, social media plugs, stuff like that. These are the people that are making sure their band is getting out there, that people are seeing them. Oftentimes, if their band does something stupid, this is also the person that is trying to put out fires and make them look better in the press. Now, getting into the on-the-road management stuff, there's quite a few we're going to go over, but let's start at the first one that usually everybody kind of knows, which is tour manager. Now, a tour manager, to put it quite simply, is the person that is making sure that the day-to-day operations of the tour while the band is on the road are running smooth and any bumps in the road are handled and taken care of so nobody else has to worry about anything. They take care of every little thing on the road for the most part. I'm talking about advancing shows, arranging transportation, when bus calls are going to be and when the right times for flights are, coordinating with the local venues, making sure that the hospitality lists are turned in. If there's no tour accountant on the tour, they're the ones taking care of all the finances. Every little thing that happens on a tour usually goes through a tour manager, and their job is there to put out fires if they arise. Now, road manager is an interesting one because that can be used interchangeably depending on who you're talking to. Some people might say road manager when they're talking about a tour manager, but on larger tours, you might have both of them. And where a tour manager takes care of the logistics of the entire tour, a road manager is usually somebody that sticks with one specific band. So it might be an opening band or something like that. You also hear the term road manager a lot when there's somebody out on the road that is basically handling the needs of that specific band while there is a tour manager that's focusing on the tour. So like I said, while a tour manager might be overseeing everything, a road manager is usually there to oversee one specific band and their crew, or sometimes just one specific band while they're on the road. Assistant tour manager is exactly what it sounds like. It's somebody that is there to assist the tour manager. And a lot of times the duties can be the exact same. It all just depends on what that specific tour manager needs from that assistant tour manager. It could be little things like guest list or accounting or media stuff for the band, just to take some of the load off the tour manager if they have too much stuff going on. On some tours, the assistant tour manager may be very involved, and it may seem like they're doing more than the actual tour manager. But at the end of the day, the tour manager is the person that people go to when questions need to be answered. So while an assistant tour manager is doing a lot of work on the road, the buck stops with the actual tour manager that's in charge. A production manager is very similar to a tour manager, but instead of overseeing the logistics of the tour as a whole, they are overseeing the technical aspects and the production of the entire tour. So on larger tours like arenas and stuff like that, and even some theaters, a production manager will also do advances just like the tour manager, except they will be talking to the venue specifically about the show, what kind of stuff they're bringing in, what they need power-wise, what kind of effects they're going to use. And where a tour manager is kind of in charge of the whole tour, the production manager is usually in charge of the crew. If there's like a hierarchy of command, crew people are usually going to go to their production manager if they have any issues, who would then take it up the chain to the tour manager if they need to. On some tours, you might even see a stage manager, and their entire job is to basically communicate across all of the different departments that have something to do with the stage to make sure that everything is organized and working properly. Stage managers are usually one of the first people in the building so that they can check out the stage and the layout of everything. And when the load-in starts, they're the one that's usually directing traffic, telling everybody where they need to go, where things need to be placed. And when set pieces and stuff start making it on stage, they're there to help and help direct with everything. Another thing that they might do during shows, especially if they're stage managers at festivals, is to make sure that all the bands are keeping to a schedule, because with noise curfews and stuff like that, it is very important that every band stays on their set time. A good stage manager will be up there watching the clock, and if a band looks like they might go over, they'll give somebody in that band's crew or the band directly a heads up that they need to end their set. Stage managers are also the point people at loadouts. They're the ones directing hands and helping the crew get everything torn down, putting everything in order, and making sure it gets on the trucks correctly. Now, a crew chief is also one of those terms that you might hear different phrases for. You might hear department head or department lead. But on larger tours, this is usually the person that is in charge of an entire department on a tour. So you might have backline crew chief, audio crew chief, lighting crew chief. And again, you might hear backline lead, audio lead, lighting lead, stuff like that. This is the person that is in charge of that department that when there are issues or decisions that need to be made, that's kind of the person that is in control of the situations. And then when problems arise, which they often do on tour, again, up that chain of command, a crew person would go to their crew chief or their lead, who would then go to a production manager that they need to, or if they need to, and then they would go to the tour manager if they need to as well. Some tours often bring security people with them on the road. You might see one or two, and there's usually a head of security. Now, while that person may be in charge for the personal security of a band or the security backstage at shows, one of their biggest things of their job is that they're going to coordinate with the venue every single day. Because these venues aren't used to the way that these crews and bands operate, the head of security is going to communicate with the venue and let them know what they need specifically or what they may need to look out for. They're the ones that are going to do the meetings with the venue every day and go over the tour passes, who's allowed where, if they have any emergency situations arise, what's going to happen. And if there is a problem in the building, the venue staff is going to go to that head of security to work out the problem. On smaller tours, a tour manager may double as this. On tours that I've tour managed on, a lot of the times when we don't have security, I will be doing security meetings with the venues and stuff like that. And it can often be a production manager sometimes as well. But on larger tours, usually it's the head of security that handles all of this. Tours will sometimes have touring promoter reps. You might just hear promoter rep, or if it's a one-off show or a festival, you might hear local rep. This is the person that represents the promotion company that booked the band for that event. On larger tours like Live Nation and AEG, it is quite common to have a touring promoter rep on the entire tour that travels on the buses, and they're there to coordinate with the venues and the tour and kind of be the middleman if there's any issues that arise, or if the tour has questions about something or something isn't exactly how it was supposed to be in the show agreement. This is the person that could step in and make sure that it's taken care of. And sometimes these people also do accounting on the road, but not always. Now let's move into all the other various positions there are on a tour. And since we were just talking about accounting, let's bring up tour accountants. Now on smaller and mid-sized tours, a tour manager may double as a tour accountant and take care of all the incoming and outgoing finances of a tour. But on larger tours, there is a specific role for this. And this person's entire job is to make sure that all of the money on a tour is balanced, accounted for. They have all the receipts for everything, because it's a lot of money that comes in and out on tours. And I'm not just talking about what the band's getting paid and stuff. I'm talking about receipts on the road for hospitality, for gas, for the buses and trucks. If anything needs to be bought at a store, all the little things, this person is going to make sure that the receipts are organized, that people are getting paid, that per diem money is going out, and all of that good stuff. Let's talk about riggers, which you usually only see on like arena and stadium tours, but riggers are a super important job on any tour. Again, with stage managers, one of the first people in the building, because when you go to an arena show or a stadium show, all of the audio and the stage and all of that stuff, that's not just there. It needs to be brought in, and a lot of this stuff needs to be hung up, which is the job of the rigger. Their main job is the safety of everything that is being flown in that arena or stadium. They have to be certified. They go through intensive training, and mathematics is actually a big part of this job. But they're the ones that if you ever see a teardown at a show or a load-in or anything, they're all the way up in the rafters, hanging stuff and all the chains and all the ropes and everything. Super important job on tour, but not often talked about for some reason. Set carpenters, often known as set carps. This is a bigger term for theater-based stuff, but you do hear this thrown around on tour with music acts a lot. This person also may describe their job as staging. This is usually the person that is building the set on the stage, whether it's risers or kind of like background effects and stuff like that. Oftentimes, if there's things that need to be built, this person is very good at carpentry, as the name would suggest, and they can build things out on the road. But typically on tour, this is the person that is in charge of building the actual staging stuff. Again, risers, stairs, all of that stuff, and making sure that everything is set up safe so when the band gets on it and uses it, nothing's falling apart. Wardrobe / dressing room managers and assistants. Now, as the name suggests, this is the person that is taking care of the band's wardrobe and their dressing rooms. Now, this is usually only on bigger tours where there's tons of different dressing rooms, usually arenas and stadiums, or if a band has costumes that they wear on stage. And even if they're not costumes, just show clothes. These people may often have sewing machines out on the road with them and different fabrics that they can fix things if they need to. They may be in charge of washing the clothes and making sure that everything's taken care of for showtime, helping with quick changes during the show. And as far as the dressing rooms, they make sure that everything is set up nice and comfortable so when the band walks in, it's an area that they're comfortable with, you know? And anything that the band might need during the day, these wardrobe and dressing room people will be there to get them what they need. Moving into backline techs. This is kind of an all-encompassing term that covers a few different things, but the word backline in general refers to the instruments and the gear that's on the stage, whether it's amps, guitars, keyboards, drums. That's all backline. So when somebody says they're a backline tech, they could be a guitar tech, a drum tech, a keyboard tech. There's a lot of other different positions. But these are the people that are responsible for maintaining the instruments of that specific member that they work for. So a guitar tech, for example, is setting up the amps, setting up the guitars, changing strings, cleaning, making sure that everything is all in working order. So all the artist or band member has to do is walk on stage, know that their stuff is going to work, and play their instrument. Drum techs do the same thing. Keyboard techs do the same thing. It's a pretty detailed job, man, because it's a lot of gear for a lot of these players. So these people put in a lot of time on the side of the stage working on stuff and making sure that it's in good order. Front of house engineers, also called FOH engineers, which FOH stands for front of house. These are the people that are doing the sound that you're hearing at the shows. So they're the people that are usually out in the center of the room at the audio desk, and they are mixing the show that the crowd is hearing. Now, that job is not to be confused with a monitor engineer. Now, the monitor engineer is the person that is in charge of the sound that the band hears, which you probably guessed that. Now, they're going to make sure that each band member gets exactly what they want to hear in their in-ears or in the monitor wedges. They're there for sound checks. They're there for showtime. They're always keeping their eyes on the band members because during a show, it is very common for a band member to look over at their monitor engineer and tell them to turn something up or down because every room is different, sound changes, and sometimes they may use a new effect or a new instrument and they need that sound change. A monitor engineer is taking care of all of that. And audio techs are taking care of the monitor engineers and front of house engineers. Often on larger tours, you'll have audio techs, which their job is to basically take care of all of the audio desks and all of the audio related stuff for those engineers. Think of audio techs as like backline techs for the band. A lot of times, these techs will have an extensive amount of knowledge, sometimes more than the actual engineers, because they might oversee the PA being hung up. They might be the ones tuning the system every day before the audio engineer comes in to mix the band for sound check in the show. And they're there in case anything arises during the show. If the front of house engineer or monitor engineer needs something or something goes down that they can't get to, an audio tech will usually be the person to take care of that. Now, the next three are pretty similar and used interchangeably, but they are slightly different depending on who you talk to. First one I want to talk about is lighting director. Now, the lighting director is usually the person that is actually at the show, on tour, running everything while the show is going on. You might often hear the term lighting designer. That usually refers to the person who actually built the show. Sometimes lighting directors, which are often referred to as lighting operators, they might not actually program the show that they're running on tour. Lighting designers do that. But sometimes lighting programmers do that too. So there's three different positions here that might be in charge of different things. Some of the biggest and well-known lighting designers in the world don't even tour half of the time. They just work from home or an office designing the show, like everything that you're going to see lighting-wise. Then a programmer will be the person that sits at the actual console, programs all of the cues in, and then the director is the person that sits and operates the show. But again, this is one of those where you might hear these terms interchangeably. You might hear somebody refer to a lighting director as a lighting designer. It all depends on who you talk to, and a lot of the times you'll hear lighting director abbreviated as LD. And most LDs will have a lighting tech, similar to the audio tech. A lighting tech is there to oversee the actual lighting system, help with setups, any repairs that need to be done, running power, cabling, and then if anything goes down during a show, lighting techs are often near the stage, so if the lighting director calls them, they can be on stage to fix whatever needs to be fixed. Moving on to video directors, these are often only seen when you're at an arena or a stadium show that has a gigantic video wall, or the IMAGs, which are the screens on the side of the stage where they have cameras, on the band members so you can see it in big places. This is the person that's usually set up either on the side of the stage or behind the stage, or often off stage, where they're overseeing all of the cameras that are being used and calling what's going to be on that screen. They're very involved in the show. And when there are setups like that, you're often going to see multiple video techs. Just like audio and lighting techs, video techs are there to make sure that the system is running. They're going to help with setup. They're going to help with patching cables. Sometimes video techs will often double as cameramen or camera women during the show if they don't have enough people out there. And these techs will usually have, over-the-ear headphones on so they can hear the video directors and know what to do. A director may call to them and say, hey, I see something over there, like move the camera over there, stuff like that. Special effects technicians, also just called SFX techs. These are the people that are taking care of any kind of usually non-pyro related effects that you're going to see at a show, whether it's confetti cannons or CO2, cryo, stuff like that. Their main job on tour is to take care of all of those effect systems, making sure that they're running, and they kind of specialize in that area, especially if it comes to CO2 with gas tanks and stuff like that. This is not to be confused.
This year is all about fresh starts. Why not start with your sound? With Splice, I'm starting the year right. For just 99 cents, I unlock millions of samples, presets, and loops to fuel my creativity. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro, Splice has all the tools you need to create your next hit. And the best part is, it's so easy to use, it's like having a full studio at your fingertips. Why wait? Start
used with a pyrotechnician who, again, just like riggers, has to be certified and go through a lot of training to do this stuff. This is the person that is not only firing the pyro on the stage at the shows, whether it's flames or actual explosive cues, but a lot of times they're actually prepping it every day. They are backstage in their own room, putting together all of the pyro canisters and all of that. And then they also have to do a demo with local fire marshals every day. So this person also has a lot that they have to go through, especially with safety. So they're very important. Going on to what I think is one of the most underappreciated roles on any tour, the merchandise manager. This is the person that is in control of all of the merchandise on the tour. And when I say all of the merchandise, I mean not just the product itself, not just selling it to fans or anything like that. This person is doing all the accounting. They may be doing all the reordering, making sure that stuff is shipped to the right place in the right time. There is so much that goes into this job, and I feel like merchandise managers don't get the credit they deserve because, truth be told, they're the only person on a tour that is actually bringing in income for the band rather than being a cost for the band. On smaller to mid-sized tours, you might often see the merchandise manager, behind the table, selling everything to the fans every single night. At larger shows, arenas and stadiums, they'll count in with the venues and make sure all the numbers are correct. And at the end of the night, you're talking sometimes settling out 5 to 6 figure numbers. This is something that a merchandise manager has to handle every night. I mean, accounting is a big part of this job as well. And then similar, but kind of not, just another people-pleasing job, VIP managers. Now, on a lot of tours, usually bigger ones, you'll see VIP managers, even when smaller tours do have VIP sessions and stuff. But on larger tours where there's a lot of organization to everything, you're going to have somebody on the road that handles all of the VIP stuff, whether it's meet and greets or signings or a quick live performance before doors open, this person is in charge of making sure that everybody that has a VIP ticket is able to get in. They're there basically as customer service if anybody has a problem. They're usually going outside to check everybody in and wrangle everybody inside, handle the meet and greets, all that kind of stuff. And for the last part of this list, some of the more unsung heroes of tour, drivers. Let's start at bus drivers. Exactly what the name implies. These are the people that are driving the tour coaches that are getting the band and the crew safely to the next venue. And that's what blows my mind. I feel like bus drivers don't get enough credit, but our lives are literally in their hands every single night. And I will say, a bus driver can make or break a tour, because I've been on tours where we've had excellent drivers, where everybody can sleep great every night and everybody feels safe. But on the flip side, there might be some drivers that drive a little more rough and it is harder to sleep. But either way, these people are very important because they keep us safe while we're touring, they keep the band safe while they're touring, and they get us to the next show. Kind of similar to bus drivers, truck drivers. As the name implies, these are the people that are driving the trucks, the semis, that take all of the gear that is necessary for a show from one place to another. And on larger tours, you may hear the term lead driver with each of these positions. You may hear lead bus driver, lead truck driver. These are usually on tours where it's arenas, stadiums, where there's multiple trucks, usually often more than 5 of each, or 5 of each bus and truck. This is a person that is almost like a crew chief in the rest of the departments. They are the driver that everybody is going to go to if they have questions or if they need anything. This is the person that's usually planning the driving route for the rest of the touring party that they're going to take to the next show. They may often kind of do a little bit of accounting too, because every night usually these bus drivers and truck drivers have to stop and fuel up and make sure that everything's safe on their vehicles. But some of the drivers may keep their receipts from gas and turn these into the lead driver, so the lead driver can collect everything and then turn it into that bus or truck company that is leasing out buses and trucks to the tour. But that's going to wrap it up for this list, which I actually feel like went way longer than I actually thought it was going to. But if you guys feel like I missed something or you have any questions or I didn't explain something, you can always drop a comment and I'll check all of them and respond to stuff. And again, there might be some positions that I missed. There might be some larger tours that have other departments and stuff that I didn't cover. If I didn't, I apologize. Don't take anything personal. These are just the very common ones that you'll usually see on most tours. But to everybody that watched, thank you so much for your time. I hope this answered some questions for you. You can follow me on other social media. My handle on everything is @TankTheTech on most everything. I also stream on Twitch from time to time, so you can join us there. But until next time, wherever you are in the world, be safe, be kind to each other. I love you all, and I will be back very soon.
Live from New York!
SNL was the biggest show ever.
I gotta have more.